Hi, I'm Pranav, and I'm presenting on behalf of my co-authors, Shreya, Geoff, and Chinmay. Every friend starts as a stranger, and when we start a new job, it is talking to strangers that helps build the social connections that make people feel at home. Think about the person you went to about that fast approaching deadline, the one who knows exactly when you need a midday coffee run. They're the support you need at the place you spend, well, most of your life, work. Every friend at work starts as a stranger. Initiating casual conversations is fundamental to how we ease into a new workplace and form valuable social relationships. And yet, people are often reluctant to initiate casual conversations and build social relationships. People may want deep and meaningful relationships with others, but may also be reluctant to engage in the conversations with strangers that could create those relationships. Even before the shift to virtual work, studies were already reporting an increase in loneliness at work. For instance, this one report noted how as many as 76% of the participants they surveyed had difficulty making connections with their coworkers, and 58% thought their relationships at work were superficial. And if you haven't yet run into one of the million thought pieces about this, this has only amplified as more teams have become virtual and fluid. And building social connections is important. Research in the field of positive psychology makes a strong case that social relationships are the single most important predictor of people's well being. Happier people spend more time talking to others, and when people have more conversations with others, they report feeling happier. A survey of 31,000 people in 31 countries found that people with more thriving relationships reported more good well-being more often. And more of them also reported feeling productive. In addition to these benefits to well-being and productivity, social connections can also spark creativity and be a source of social support. And yet people seem reluctant to talk to strangers, passing up a readily available source of well-being. Why? One reason for this is that initiating conversations with strangers is risky. It's risky because we're unsure if people will enjoy talking about the things that we want to talk about. Others may have the same fears too, which can lead to this collective ignorance. And these fears can persist even in online spaces. Why do we fear initiating casual conversations? Prior work has shown two reasons why people hesitate. First is a fear of approaching others. People fear they won't be liked before the conversation even begins. They worry that their attempts to initiate conversation might be rejected. Second is a fear of conversation enjoyment. People fear that their conversation partners will not enjoy the conversation or may leave with a poor impression of them. But both of these fears are often miscalibrated. Prior work has repeatedly shown that people underestimate how interested strangers would be in talking to them. And prior work has also repeatedly shown that people do enjoy talking to strangers more than we expect they will. So we've been thinking about alternate conversation pathways that can lower these psychological barriers to initiating interactions. What if individuals could know in advance that the people they were about to interact with were actually interested in talking about the same topic? While this may be hard to do in person, our virtual spaces allow us to do this. And today, most workplaces use an online space like Slack or Teams to supplement in-person interaction. To explore the possibility, we built Nooks, a tool for Slack. Nook supports initial interactions in the workplace by enabling individuals to discover and interact with others they share common interests with, while lowering fears of social evaluation typically involved. By iteratively bringing unacquainted individuals across the workplace in contact with each other over shared interests, Nooks attempts to support social relationships at work. Nooks is built on two simple ideas. We let people start conversations anonymously, and we limit participation to only those who are actually interested in the conversation, to establish that everyone in the conversation actually wants to participate. Because creation is anonymous, you no longer have to worry about the social rejection. And because participation is limited to only others who are interested, you know that they want to talk. Both of this can reduce fears of approaching others. Because the conversation does not identify a creator, no one person is solely responsible for making sure the conversation is enjoyable. And you know everyone's interested, so you know they will likely enjoy. This can lower fears of conversation enjoyment. So together we conjecture that Nooks can lower fears about approaching others as well as fears of conversation enjoyment. Now I'm going to talk about the design of Nooks. As I mentioned, Nooks has two simple ideas: anonymous creation and limiting participation to only interested others. I'm going to explain how this works with the help of an example scenario. Jose has recently joined a new design agency, and as someone that enjoys reading mystery novels, Jose is interested in finding others at work with whom he can exchange recommendations and discuss books. He's connected to others through Slack and also has opportunities to approach them in person, but he may be unsure about who's interested or whether people will find this invitation appropriate. So he decides to use Nooks. Jose simply creates an anonymous Nook on mystery novels. A Nook is a conversation room proposed anonymously and is the building block underlying our application. In the description, he clarifies his intentions to use the space to exchange recommendations and discuss books. The app's execution engine accumulates others who are interested in joining this conversation by simply asking everyone in the workplace. Finally, Jose is added to a private Slack channel with others who have also expressed interest in the Nook all at once. Here's an example of what a Nook looks like. Nooks is a continually running system that probes individuals about their interests in joining various conversations among an evolving pool of Nooks. Anyone across the workplace can anonymously contribute a Nook, and Nooks convenes conversations around shared interests on an ongoing basis. So what does this ongoing use look like? First, we need to be able to source conversations on an ongoing basis. To do this, Nooks just lets anyone create a conversation at any time. User can go to the Nooks homepage and click on Create a Nook, which pulls up this overlay where they can fill out what they want to talk about. Then we need to find interested people for every Nook. To do this, we just ask everyone about their interest in each Nook. Proposed Nooks are shown on the app's homepage where people can express their interest. And everyone in the workplace that has signed up on the application can see this on their own homepage. Here's where we run into our first problem. How do we make sure a Nook is viewed by enough people and that people have had enough time to view it? Because we can't expect people to constantly monitor the app, and we can't also keep notifying them every time a Nook is created. Our solution is simply to wait. We call this the Nook's incubation period, during which it is displayed to others across the workplace. So for every Nook before it's launched, we have this incubation period. Now, when people are added to a Slack channel, they might not participate immediately. Some might get to it later, but some might never. So how do we deal with this diffuse participation? To overcome this, we establish times of expected activity. By creating an expectation of when the space will be active, we can concentrate participation. In Nooks, we do this by limiting the life of a Nook to 24 hours, after which it is archived. There are also some more tricks to the actual system itself. For instance, we batch Nooks together and incubate them and launch them in batches as a way to minimize interruptions while maximizing interaction opportunities. If you're interested in details, I welcome you to read the paper. To observe naturalistic use, we deployed Nooks for 9 weeks with student workers starting a summer research program at a North American university. Students in the program worked full-time. They worked across 4 locations on campus. 80% of them were new to the university and most were unacquainted. They also had a Slack workspace, and the program ran 10 weeks, and we deployed in week 2 when they had just settled in but might not have yet gotten to know each other. At the end of the deployment, we invited all the 22 participants to participate in interviews, of whom 9 agreed to be interviewed, and we did a reflexive thematic analysis on the transcripts. Here are some examples of the Nooks initiated by participants. These range from conversations about books and movies to planning activities. And in the last week, they even exchanged a Nook. They even had a Nook where they exchanged LinkedIns to stay in touch. Many participants mentioned that they thought Nooks provided a low-risk way to initiate interactions. This participant mentioned how they thought it was less intimidating because it was anonymous. They thought people who might not be super extroverted or who would be uncomfortable just throwing out an idea to the group would feel most comfortable in Nooks. Overwhelmingly, participants used Nooks to initiate offline activities. Of the 16 Nooks created, 10 were attempts to either directly or indirectly initiate activities. So these direct attempts looked like planning an activity for 4th of July or for the weekend, whereas indirect attempts were sort of where the conversation was about some topic, but they still try to initiate an activity as part of that. Many participants also brought this up as one of their motivations for using Nooks. This participant mentioned how they were alone in their office and Nooks sort of helped them meet and interact with others. And many of these plans actually materialized. For instance, this one group actually went and got food. Over time, they found Nooks especially useful for initiating activities. So participant mentioned how putting out a message in the general channel might not lead to as much momentum, but because participants in the Nooks had a priori expressed interest, it often led to generating momentum pretty quickly. We also found that Nooks promoted inclusivity. It made it easier to include others in conversations because by default, it allowed anyone to opt into a conversation they were interested in. And more generally, it also made people feel more included in the program. For instance, this one participant who joined the program late mentioned how without Nooks, they probably would have only known what other people look like and their names. Nooks provided ambient awareness. This included ambient awareness about other people's interests. So one participant mentioned how even if you didn't really interact with the Nooks, just by sort of swiping through, you could figure out what your coworkers' interests were. And it also provided ambient awareness about others' desires to socialize. So who really wanted to connect and who was willing to maybe have a chat. Finally, we found that the motivation to interact reduced once people had formed their connections. So once people had already formed their groups and had formed their friends, interactions within the Nooks dropped. And when we interviewed participants that minimally interacted in Nooks, we usually found that this was because they either already had friends in the city or friends in other aspects of their life, due to which their motivation to interact in Nooks reduced. So to summarize, Nooks supported non-threatening ways to initiate interactions. It led to offline activities and conversations outside the application. Nooks promoted inclusivity. It provided ambient awareness of colleagues' interests and their desires to socialize. And the motivation to interact reduced once people had formed connections. Thank you.